This is Darren L. Hammond with SIPMinis.com, and today's presentation is titled The Analysis of Language. The Analysis of Language, a Portal into the Mind. If you look at that title, the analysis of language corresponds to linguistics, which is the science of language, the study of language in all of its components. And a portal into the mind, this is the unique aspect of Chomsky's work that opened up the mind through language as a means of interpretation. So Chomsky was born in 1928, and he attended MIT and taught there for 50 years, at which time he became an emeritus professor in the Department of Linguistics and Philosophy. So MIT was where the bulk of his work took place. And most of the great scholars in the 20th and 21st century in linguistics and cognitive science come out of MIT. Not that they don't come out of other places, but MIT is certainly a breeding ground for them. Chomsky is very famous and very influential, and sometimes people underestimate or perhaps haven't heard the name Chomsky before, but he is among the top 10 most cited writers, and he sits at number 8 there, and that's in the pack with Shakespeare, the Bible, and so forth. So a very important figure, and you may ask yourself, well, why is he so influential? And there is good reason for that. He was the first one to really see the complexity of language in human beings. And it's his study of language that sparked a revolution in linguistics, and as a consequence, a revolution in cognition, or the cognitive revolution. He saw more accurately than anyone previous to him the complexity in language, the fact that language has represented throughout the ages one of the great mysteries of human beings, and also one of the greatest complexities of human beings. Just think, look at that question there. Why so influential? Think of the processes involved in reading that or in hearing that and understanding it. Language is so complex, so intricate, and Chomsky asked himself, what is responsible for that complexity, and how is a human being capable of creating and interpreting such complexity? And the answer had to be in the mind, he determined. And so the mind he viewed as more complex than ever before. And think again about that question, why so influential? You understood that almost instantaneously. And this led Chomsky to believe that there must be something more significant than what people of the time were thinking in linguistics. And the principal person who was considered the cutting edge of linguistics at the time that Chomsky began writing was B.F. Skinner, and he is the famous behavioral psychologist who performed all the experiments and training of pigeons. Well, he conceived of the human mind as being similar to that of any other animal, or the pigeon specifically, in that the human mind is trained and through that training, learns the very complex language wherever the person is speaking. So he believed it was a matter of training and years of experience, and with that, a human being could acquire and use a language. And you can see that this is oversimplified just thinking about the fact that this is the same type of behavior he's attributing to a pigeon who pecks at a certain object when a bell is rung. So something that simple. Chomsky ripped him apart in 1957, and he published in 1957 and 1959 the two books that you're looking at. Chomsky criticized B.F. Skinner, who had written the most important work on language, verbal behavior, in 1957. And in a short review, Chomsky basically dismantled all of linguistic understanding, stating that the idea that language through reinforcement or training is quite empty. Those are his words. So in one mighty stroke, he was able to take down the great B.F. Skinner and began replacing that with a new vision of language, a vision that was infinitely more complex. And he suggested that human beings, instead of being born with a blank slate in the brain, were born with a hardwired brain. And this hardwiring, the innate language ability, is what prepared them to learn any language, which, if you think about that, is quite remarkable, that any human being without some kind of disability can learn any language that they are dropped into and exposed to. So he said that they were hardwired. Humans are hardwired. And how do you explain that? In other words, how can one explain the intricacies of the hardwiring involved to embed language within human beings? Well, he said that it took place over the millions of years of evolution of the human brain, which made sense to people in the sciences. But it was shocking to linguists, psychologists, and scientists in general. Made the brain far more complex than Skinner had imagined, far more intricate, and also brought the idea that language, in fact, is programmed, or a precursor to it is programmed into the human brain at birth. This sparked the cognitive revolution, which gave birth to what we consider modern linguistics, but also cognitive science, neuroscience, neurophilosophy, and computer science, among many others. And the way that he made this possible is through the universality of language, but also he's noted for his generative and transformational grammar. Generative meaning that with a finite number of pieces, which are sounds, with a finite number of those, we can create an infinite variety of sentences and meanings. So it is generative in that sense, infinite from finite pieces. And transformational has to do with the way that he broke down the language into its component parts. So he broke down sentences into phrases and clauses, which he broke down into words, and the words down into individual sounds. And in doing this, he made sense that language could be similar to a computer programmed into the mind of a human being at birth, and thus sparked the cognitive revolution and all that would come after it. Thank you.